Russian tactics to breach Ukrainian defenses have shifted away from massive armored offensives toward more discreet and calculated infiltration operations. Instead of deploying large columns of tanks or mechanized units, which have often been blunted by Ukrainian defensive fortifications and constant drone surveillance, Russian forces increasingly rely on small, dismounted infantry groups. These units specialize in slipping through less fortified or poorly guarded sections of the front line, sometimes referred to as total infiltration operations, allowing them to bypass strongpoints and penetrate deep into Ukrainian-held territory. Once a gap is found, these small teams move quietly through it, aiming to outflank fixed defenses rather than fight head-on. They often seize patches of ground, fortify them, and then call for reinforcements to consolidate their foothold. Some of these infiltration units often create chaos or reconnaissance teams, push as far as 10 to 17 kilometers, which is about 10 miles behind Ukrainian positions, creating narrow salients that put critical transport links and logistics hubs at risk. This method enables the Russians to threaten supply lines and force Ukrainian commanders to divert resources to plug these breaches. The approach benefits from Russia's manpower advantage. By applying pressure simultaneously at multiple points along the front, they overstretch an already undermanned Ukrainian defense, forcing it to cover more ground than it can effectively protect. Drones remain a key part of this strategy, not just for spotting targets, but for guiding artillery and airstrikes, though the real focus is on exploiting disorganization and catching understaffed Ukrainian units off guard. The assaults tend to be small-scale and near-constant, chipping away at defenses over time and steadily creating openings for deeper advances. Recent developments near Dobrapilya and Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region offer a clear example. Here, Russian infiltration tactics allow them to slip through localized defenses, threatening to sever Ukrainian supply routes and potentially encircle key urban centers. These gains came by bypassing heavily fortified positions, focusing instead on weaker segments and holding captured ground despite taking significant casualties. However, such tactics do not deliver instant sweeping victories. Ukrainian forces have adapted by deploying their own drones, laying extensive minefields, and relying on indirect fire to disrupt and repel infiltration teams. While Russian progress has been visible in certain sectors, it is slow, costly, and requires further effort to turn initial penetrations into broader territorial control. The battle has become a grinding contest of patience and endurance, with Russia probing for weaknesses and Ukraine working to seal them before they turn into decisive breakthroughs. Let's take a look at why Russia decides to invade Ukraine. The roots of Russia's decision to invade Ukraine go back to the era of the Soviet Union. At that time, Russia controlled a vast expanse of land across Europe, and its borders were much easier to defend. The northern European plain, which runs through much of Eastern Europe, didn't extend as far into Russia, making it harder for invaders to reach the Russian heartland. If NATO had wanted to strike, it would have had to pass through a narrow, flat region in central Germany. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the political and security situation in Europe changed dramatically. NATO, which was originally a defensive alliance, began expanding steadily. In 1999, countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic joined. Then in 2004, NATO added Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. In the following years, Croatia and Albania became members in 2009, Montenegro in 2017, and North Macedonia in 2020. As NATO continued to expand eastward, Russia became increasingly alarmed. Its greatest fear was that Ukraine, which shares a 2,300-kilometer border with Russia, might eventually be invited to join the alliance. For Moscow, that would have been a huge strategic problem. The idea of NATO moving closer to Russia's doorstep was something it simply couldn't overlook. Let's take a look at the timeline from 2014. Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych abruptly pulls back from signing the long-anticipated free trade agreement with the European Union. The decision sparks massive protests across the country, as many Ukrainians see the move as a step away from European integration and a tilt toward Russia. March 2014, with Russian troops already in control of Crimea, the region's parliament votes to secede from Ukraine and join Russia. A public referendum follows, with 97% of voters reportedly supporting the move, though the results are widely disputed by the international community. April 2014, tensions escalate as 40,000 Russian troops amass on Ukraine's eastern border. Violence erupts in the Donbas region, where pro-Russian separatists clash with Ukrainian forces. April 2021, Russia ramps up its military presence near Ukraine, deploying around 100,000 troops to the border. In response, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calls on NATO to accelerate Ukraine's path to membership, citing growing security concerns. This is a map of Ukraine in the year 2022. The area marked in red shows Crimea, which Russia had already annexed. This is February 2022. At this point, a critical mistake was made by the Russian generals. They assumed that taking Ukraine would be easy and spread their forces across the country. This is the map from March 2022. The areas marked in red and checkered show the rapid advance of the Russian army. However, on November 22nd, this is where things took an unexpected turn. Ukraine fought back fiercely, reclaiming significant ground and shocking the Russian military. By February 2025, the Russian army appears to be making some advances, but at a much slower pace than anticipated. On October 8, 2022, the Crimean Bridge explosion led to a strong Russian retaliation. Nearly 2 years later, on August 6, 2024, Ukraine launched a major offensive inside Russian territory. By October and November of 2024, North Korean troops had joined Russia's war effort. By mid-November, approximately 10,000 North Korean forces were in Russia, with some actively engaging in combat in Kursk. Speaking of invasion, even our devices are always under attack from viruses and scammers, like this email alert tool as shown here. Now take a look at my Netflix account. As you can see, I'm currently in Norway. To switch to a US server, all I have to do is click here, refresh, and boom, you're now accessing Netflix US. Beyond that, it includes a robust antivirus software to shield your devices from viruses, malware, and tracking by ads, bots, or third parties. Finally, with Surfshark VPN, a single subscription covers not just you, but also your friends or even your entire city if you wanted. Go to our link surfshark.com/AITele. By buying through the promo link, you will get 4 extra months free, assured by a 30-day money-back guarantee. While Russia recently launched one of the largest aerial assaults of the war against Ukraine, deploying a record number of drones and missiles in a coordinated multi-night campaign. These strikes targeted more than 30 cities and regions across the country. In an average single night, Russia reportedly launched approximately 367 drones and missiles. Ukrainian sources confirmed that this included 298 drones and 69 missiles. Despite the scale of the attack, Ukrainian air defenses, they successfully intercepted the majority of the projectiles, reportedly shooting down 266 out of the 298 drones and 45 of the missiles. These missiles were launched, including multiple cruise missiles and, not to forget, the Caliber ballistic missiles. In addition, a dozen Kh-59 or Kh-69 missiles, along with hundreds of drones, were also used. This is how the assault followed a strategic sequence. The slower, drone-like Shahed came first, followed by the faster Lancet drones. Then came the cruise missiles and finally the ballistic missiles. These are perfectly timed so that they more or less reach at the same time to create chaos. Let's examine why Russia is focused on retaking areas in northeastern Ukraine. In addition to its ongoing aerial offensive, Russia has been amassing troops along the Ukrainian border. The apparent goal is to put pressure on Ukrainian forces stationed in the region, effectively pinning them in place. This strategy is designed to prevent Ukrainian troops from redeploying to the south, where they are urgently needed to counter Russia's summer offensives. By opening a new front in the northeast, Russia aims to divert Ukrainian forces away from other critical areas in the east and south, where Russian forces have been making slow but steady progress. This tactic is intended to stretch and weaken Ukrainian defenses across multiple fronts. One of Russia's key objectives appears to be a strategically important city in the northeast. It serves as a military hub with inherited Soviet-era military infrastructure, including arms depots and airbase. Its location, just 20 miles from the Russian border, makes it a logistically feasible and attractive target for Russian forces. Why is Kharkiv so hard to capture? You think Kharkiv would be easy to take. It's just 30 kilometers from the Russian border. But that actually works against Russia. The moment they try to gather troops or equipment near the city, they're exposed to Ukrainian artillery and counterattacks, including strikes coming from across the border. And the terrain around Kharkiv? It's wide open and flat, a nightmare for attacking forces. Russian troops become easy targets for Ukraine's drones, precision artillery, and long-range weapons. There's very little natural cover. Ukraine's also spent years fortifying the city. There are reinforced defensive lines, trenches, and barriers surrounding Kharkiv. They've laid minefields and anti-tank traps along the major approach routes. Inside the city, it's even more complex. Ukraine has turned the urban environment itself into a weapon, using buildings, subways, and civilian infrastructure to move, hide, and fight. Interestingly, the Ukrainians are still being targeted by Russia's remaining Tu-95 strategic bombers. Flight paths are carefully chosen to avoid Ukrainian air defenses, with the bombers usually staying within Russian airspace or flying over the Caspian Sea to remain out of range. Once within striking distance, the Tu-95 launches multiple Kh-101 cruise missiles, each with a range of up to 3,500 kilometers, which is about 2,100 miles, in a single sortie. These missiles fly at low altitudes, hugging the terrain to avoid radar detection, and are guided by GLONASS, Russia's satellite navigation system, for precise targeting. Depending on their flight path, the missiles can hit targets deep inside Ukraine, including major cities like Kyiv, Lviv, or Odessa. These strikes are often part of coordinated salvos, sometimes launched alongside Iranian-made Shahed-136 drones to overwhelm and confuse Ukrainian air defense systems. We also make original engineering content, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos.